horror film favorites. Halloween Review. Just the facts. Halloween is the name of a 1978 American horror film written by John Carpenter and Deborah Hill and produced by Deborah Hill and directed by John Carpenter, who had previously directed the 1976 siege thriller Assault on Precinct 13, and who would go on to direct cult classics like 1980's The Fog, the 1982 remake of the 50s B-movie sci-fi horror flick The Thing, and the satirical science fiction thriller They Live in 1987. Carpenter also composed the legendary music for Halloween, as was the case for most of his films. Plot. On Halloween night in 1963, a 6-year-old boy named Michael Myers murders his teenage sister with a knife for no apparent reason. Seemingly completely insane, he is committed to a mental asylum where he remains for 15 years until Halloween 1978. When he escapes and returns to his hometown of Haddonfield. A teenage babysitter named Laurie Strode and her friends find themselves the prime target for the escaped madman. Cast. The film stars legendary British actor Donald Pleasence as Dr. Loomis, the psychiatrist who initially tried to reach Myers but is now aware of just how dangerous and evil his patient is and is determined to stop him. Pleasence had a long and memorable career in films and television, including films such as The Flesh and the Fiends with Peter Cushing, The Great Escape, television series such as The Rivals of Sherlock Holmes, and as Blofeld in the 1967 James Bond film You Only Live Twice, where his performance as the supervillain became so enmeshed in pop culture that it was the clear inspiration for the Dr. Evil character in the Austin Powers comedy movie series in the late 90s and early 2000s. Halloween also marked the film debut of Jamie Lee Curtis, the daughter of Hollywood royalty Tony Curtis and Janet Leigh. Curtis became an iconic scream queen as a result of Halloween, appearing not just in the film's immediate sequel Halloween 2 and Carpenter's own The Fog but a string of other similar-themed slasher films such as Prom Night and Terror Train, before moving into success in other genres with films such as Trading Places, A Fish Called Wanda, and the Arnold Schwarzenegger blockbuster True Lies. However, Curtis would return to the series again in the late 90s and early 2000s with Halloween H20 and the less successful Halloween Resurrection, and again reprised her role as Laurie Strode in the new 2018 Halloween sequel. Trivia. The series spawned not just 8 sequels as well as a remake the late 2000s that was followed by its own sequel, but essentially launched the slasher genre as a major subgenre of horror, even if earlier films such as the seminal 1974 Black Christmas had already covered similar ground. The franchise is not internally consistent. While Halloween 2 was a direct sequel to the original, actually picking up events on the same night mere moments after the first film ended, and revealing that Laurie was actually Myers' sister, the third film, subtitled Season of the Witch, notoriously attempted to make the series an anthology franchise that did not feature Michael Myers, but flopped. Halloween 4, 5 and 6 were direct sequels to Halloween 2 but picked up 10 years later and elected to kill off Laurie Strode off-screen in a car accident, with the films focusing on Dr. Loomis and his attempts to prevent an again escaped Myers murdering Laurie's young daughter Jamie, played by Danielle Harris. These films, notably the 5th and 6th installments, also began to introduce a more overt supernatural explanation for the evil Myers' apparent invincibility. The 3 movies were retconned and ignored in the 7th film, Halloween H20 in 1998, which celebrated the 20th anniversary of the original film by bringing back Jamie Lee Curtis as Laurie for a seemingly final showdown with her insane brother. The film was a huge hit, unfortunately spawning yet another sequel, Halloween Resurrection, in the early 2000s, which elected to kill off or clearly reluctant Curtis in the first act, effectively completely negating the impact and point of the previous film. Resurrection was a huge flop, and in 2009 the decision was made to reboot the series entirely and simply remake the original Halloween. The remake was a box office hit, and garnered its own sequel a few years later, which flopped. Now in 2018 the series has elected to return to the original continuity, albeit jettisoning everything after the original film, even the original Halloween 2 and its revelation of the sibling connection between Myers and Laurie, and bringing back Jamie Lee Curtis as Laurie yet again. In 2006 the original Halloween was selected by the Library of Congress to be preserved in the United States National Film Registry. The film was made for just $300,000 and shot across 20 days in 4 weeks in the May of 1978. The mask worn by the killer throughout the film was, famously, actually a costume shop mask of Captain Kirk, aka William Shatner, from Star Trek, which was slightly altered and spray-painted white. The film was novelized by Richard Curtis under the pseudonym Curtis Richards in 1979. Halloween received its network TV premiere in 1981, which almost uniquely had several scenes, almost 12 minutes in total, newly shot for the screening, including a scene of Loomis talking to the 6-year-old Michael. Halloween was also made into a video game for the Atari 2600 in 1983, in which players had to play a teenage babysitter trying to protect children from the maniac Myers. Halloween was released on video in the 1980s and on DVD in 1997, followed by an extended edition and a 2-disc limited edition in 1999 by Anchor Bay, who then released a special 25th anniversary edition in 2003. The film was released on Blu-ray in 2007, and as part of a box set with Halloween 4 and 5 in 2008 as a part of a 30th anniversary celebration release. It was released on Blu-ray again with a new transfer supervised by cinematographer Dean Cundey in 2013 to celebrate the 35th anniversary, winning a Saturn Award for Best Classic Film Release. In 2014 Anchor Bay and Scream Factory joined together to release a box set Blu-ray release that included every Halloween film, including the original, in the same set for the first time. The film has also been released again in 2018 in both Blu-ray and Ultra HD Blu-ray to celebrate the film's 40th anniversary. Reaction. The film was released on the 25th of October 1978 and became a smash hit, grossing $47 million in the US and $70 million worldwide, making it for a long time the most successful independent film ever made to that point. In 1979 Halloween was nominated by the Academy of Science Fiction, Fantasy and Horror Films for the Saturn Award for Best Horror Film. Contemporary critics were initially dismissive of or simply uninterested in Halloween, but many soon began to relent, with the likes of Roger Ebert naming it one of his top 10 best films of 1978 and a genuinely scary horror movie. It has latterly been named as the third scariest film ever made by the Chicago Film Critics Association. What I think? Let's not beat about the bush or keep you in suspense. I fucking love Halloween. I enjoy many of the sequels, but none of them have ever topped the original for its almost primal simplicity. Beautifully cast, expertly directed and perfectly scored, Halloween was the #1 in horror back when I was a kid, and having watched it again this year, it has lost none of its power. Halloween is one of my top 10 favorite films of all time and gets an unequivocal rating of A+.